We're back! Season 4 of Unscripted, the Nudgee College Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Denning, and in this series, we're going to explore 135 years of history that has helped shape what Nudgee has become today. We've got a brand new set, brand new stories, but still all Nudgee. Welcome to Unscripted, a 135-year celebration. Let's get it on. What better way to start this series of Unscripted than with one man who knows just about everything there is to know about Nudgee. I'm talking about John Sayre. He's the College Archivist, and he has told stories about countless students, old boys, staff, Nudgee facilities, and the students here at the college. I can't wait to interview him here in the Nudgee College Museum that he has beautifully curated over many years. All right, John, we're here in the Nudgee Museum. Now, is there a particular story or piece of memorabilia in this room that truly stands out for you?
There's a jersey in the corner, 1933, belongs to a chap named Joe Faust. North Queensland family, massive Nudgee family, poignant story. He gave his life to save his mates after surviving a torpedo of a prisoner of war ship that was a Japanese ship, and makeshift raft of pallets, too many on the raft. It was sinking, greasy surface. He and another Nudgee mate, chap named Val Madre, they were good swimmers at school. Faust won the oratory, so he could obviously talk, but they spent their time swimming away and bringing men, survivors, back to the raft. That was the afternoon into the evening. Come that, the next morning, those two men are gone. They'd given their life. He was the uncle of Brother Damien Price, who's just recently been on our board here and still works at the college. So the connection across that century, I think, is, well, I've used the word poignant. It's lovely. And it's a message to the boys, camaraderie, loyalty, look after your mates, which is a massive part of the story here.
It's an amazing jersey. I've never seen it before. It's in tatters. And it's not the jersey of someone who was captain of the first 15, but it's the jersey of someone who gave their life after leaving Nudgee for their mates. And I think that is just, it's sensational that you've got that on display because it speaks volumes to what this place is all about.
It is, and it goes to the generosity of Brother Damien, but of so many people who share this special stuff in their lives, and that we've now got a place to really celebrate that story.
Look, you've given me goosebumps. We only just started talking about the amazing room that we're in. You must feel a lot of pride when you're in here. I mean, this, from my understanding, is a lot of your hard work and collection, is bringing together timepieces and mementos from the history of this great college.
Thank you for saying that. It's on the back of, he's now Associate Professor Martin Kirby. He was the man who was in the library, and then he had a passion for history, wrote 2 books on, one from Nudgee's military history, one for terrorists. He wrote a living history of Nudgee as a following on from the Boland years. And Martin is a wizard, is a wizard at getting government grants, and he got a grant on the back of the centenary of Anzac, 2015, and he created a military theme in this space. So under these acrylic displays and in these pods were military battlefield dioramas, and also tragically it was following on from the passing of from Nudgee College, the 2 lads. So the rugby room inside was created. Martin brought all that together, and he then moved on to tertiary education. Principles changed. Peter Fulliger was the boss. My circumstances changed at the college here, and Peter offered me the opportunity to curate the museum and catalogue the archives. I twiddled my thumb, COVID kicked in, created a catalogue, and then started. And for me, it's been a field of dreams from that old Kevin Costner movie. I haven't had to ask anyone. It's just walked in the door. It's been very humbling.
That's amazing.
Once they knew that I was serious about it, bingo, it was just wonderful.
Well, this is a room that wasn't here when I was at the college. This was a dormitory back in the day, this museum?
Correct. Yep.
And for those who know the college, we're essentially almost above Ryan Hall.
Yes.
Looking out over Ross Oval is this sensational museum. And I just had a walk around and, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. We've got Robert Toyer's State of Origin jersey.
Extraordinary, very generous. He's only got 3 last year and he gave us 1 of them. So that's proudly hanging in the Internationals room now. Yeah.
And the International room is full of amazing names, from the last 100 years. I saw in a cabinet over here, I was a student here in the 90s, and Andrew Christie has a memorial, which I know a lot of people from my era, knew Andrew Christie, who lost his life or, died, I suppose, a few years ago now, but had a big impact on his friendship group and people in this place.
Correct. He was an outstanding Special Forces soldier, and it's a story it's sad, and it's one that I think it's important to tell, that so many of our old boys have moved into the military and gone the next level at the pointy end of the spear, he's paid a price, and that's the story about our men and women coming back from the Middle East, the cost to them and to the country. So we're trying to remember that and acknowledge that, and there are several other chaps who are in that area as well, and it's tragic. His was a tragic death. Pete Gledhill got invited to the funeral in Canberra. Peter was very humbled by that, and it was extraordinary in a Special Forces funeral. Absolutely,
and to think of the countless people who have left Nudgee to go and work in the Special Forces that aren't in this museum, that also still have their own challenges with their own mental health and well-being, or have gone on to have successful careers in the military.
Very true, and it's one it's a tricky road to walk. We can't put their names outside the chapel because they didn't die in action, but the cost to those men and women is actually after the event. So we're finding more and more, and fellows come in and tell stories. Chris Marr told me a story of the incident where Ben Roberts-Smith was awarded his VC. Mm-hmm. He would only give me a perfunctory account of it because he was still required for national security to keep his mouth closed and just only speak the word. But so many of our guys are at that point.
So many. And honestly, if you're listening to this and you get a chance to come and check out this museum, it is so worth the experience. I mean, for me, it brings back memories, and I see friends up on the walls. And I think it doesn't matter when you finished at Nudgee or if you've got kids here at Nudgee, there's just spending half an hour in this place. There's so much value to sort of soak in and to take out of it.
I lead with groups when they come in.
Yeah.
I acknowledge the traditional owners. Yep. And the very next breath, I say this place celebrates the footprints of the 24,000. Yeah. 10,000 is the metaphor, but 24,000 is the real number of lads who've walked this footprint. And it's quite significant. And this is boy space. Everything in here is boys. In that room in there, it's what boys did as men. Is a simple dichotomy of how I've tried to set it up.
Oh, I love that. And because we have touched on a couple of tougher stories from the start where there's been grief or sadness or loss, but the room is a celebration. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not a room where you come in and it's one that you walk away feeling worse. It's one where you can reflect, but also, mate, there's some phenomenal achievements in here when you look around these walls.
There's a megaphone just behind your head, which may be in shot eventually, but that's got stories. That was knocked off and under a guy's barbecue at his place for 25, 30 years. Because each year the subbies would get it, paint it over and start again with their graffiti.
Love it.
And it's great. And this guy finally, he saw our series, he said, "Sarah, would you like this?" I said, "Yes, please."
So tell us a little bit about the origin story of Nudgee. Because there is the myth and there's the truth and there's sort of somewhere in between. So I've heard the story, but I'd love to hear it from your mouth as to how the school really did begin, how the battle of the colours really did come about, and how it's influenced the jerseys that we wear today.
Okay, there's a couple of questions in there. If you go back to 1891, British penal colony. Irish Christian brothers come in. Irish and the Poms, it was a challenging time. Mm-hmm. The Irish Christian brothers were extraordinarily patriotic. So they brought with them their Irish games, handball, like on a squash court, all those ones where if you were good enough, you played the game. And you got sorted out by your peers, doesn't matter of the age range. Religious bigotry was part of the landscape. And to serious comment here, and the adults who'd, that Protestant Catholic thing, mm-hmm. That's totally not in the dialogue for modern day kids. They just don't get that because that's not their reality anymore, and thank goodness. But the brothers and the parents would impress upon the boys, that whole anti-Protestant or anti-Catholic thing. The kids weren't stupid. That's where Jack Ross came into the picture. He had a big thing about mentoring boys in that post-school gap between 17 and early adulthood where they can be lost souls. Brothers Rugby Club became a part of that story because what the boys worked out is that when they played sport, level playing field's a cliche, Ross Oval outside the window, they engaged with, now the schools at the time were the grammar schools, because they were funded by the government, and some adult clubs. So the GPS as we know it didn't come into 2018. Once the kids played sport with each other, they realised they weren't such bad fellows. And they're thinking, what's all this stuff about? I'm supposed to hate these blokes. They're good blokes. You go to clubland, and more so. Nudgee also participated in the open competition. That's why Tom Barron could play for the First for 6 years. You can't do these days. So our boys taught their peers, their parents and the brothers the mistruth of religious bigotry. And it was a level playing field. And that's what we try to tell by the presence of the rugby stuff in here and the various sporting things. It was on that playing field that we actually engaged with our community and were accepted. Now, the colours. Okay. Look, I could say our sister school, sent us out here, but that'd be very impolite to say that. So 1891, Terrace had increasing numbers of boarders from the country. Space was at a premium. They couldn't fit them in. So they had to find a place out to the bush, so they came out here. And that was all. That's a whole story about how they got the land, but that's another story. When they came out here, they struggled, and of course, there's a photo in the boardroom there, 1892, Brother Duggan, Thursday Bodkin, and Duggan it was, all these boys, and they were smiling on their dial, because they were the terrace blokes, and the last thing they wanted to do was come back here. So when they played sport with each other, it was game on. It was the stuff of that competition, the stuff of that engagement. Now, I went to terrace. I totally get the antipathy that, that's part of the fun of handing that one on. But uniform of the day was Sunday best. So all those old photos, they're all dressed up in their double-breasted suits and their ties, and Sunday best was the uniform. So the T.C. Byrne, McWhirters, Allen and Stark, Pennies, all those old shops made a fortune because they were selling Sunday best to all the private schools, the grammar schools and the Catholic schools. Brother Reedy at Terrace in the early 20s said to the Christian Brothers schools, now that's St Lawrence's, St James, Nudgee, Terrace, hey, our parents are broke. We've got the depression. We need to be sensible about this. We go to uniforms. So it was based on cost.
So you're saying Sunday best, like you'd come to school dressed in your Sunday best every day?
That was the uniform, yep.
Pre-uniform?
Yeah, you look at all the old photos, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was very much a case of that's how they had to come. That was the uniform. And the school identities were evolving. So Nudgee back in 1910, under Brother McGee, because the cricketers were rough and ready, and it's all bloody cricket, he put them in the blue and white blazer. Bit like a dandy was the word used, but it was a touch of class, and they become proud of wearing that. Brother Reedy recognised in the early 20s that Nudgee had been using a blue and white blazer for 14, 15 years. The gentleman that he is, or was, he said, well, you guys have already got that. You can have the colours. The far better story is that game of footy.
Yes.
All right, much better.
That's what I believed when I went here.
And those guys who had the grumpy look on their dial in that photograph, they were quite happy to be watchers out of each other and lay claim to the victories, the spoils of victory.
So you're saying this myth of this one footy game where it was the battle for the colours, whoever wins the game gets the blue and white, the loser gets the red and black. There's a little bit of poetic license. Very much so, but it's a good story. We love a good story.
Particularly
sometimes that's
if you're
just
on the winning end of it, yeah.
So when did your journey start with Nudgee? How long have you been here for? And you went to school at Terrace, but how did you come across to the sunny side of the road?
So I was a Christian brother for a few years once I left school. So in that time I taught in Bundaberg, Toowoomba, Warwick, and I finished up at Terrace as a brother. Got out of there, went to Marston College at Enoggera with the Morris brothers. That was a mistake. A different tradition, that's what it was. Went to St Rita's because I hadn't taught girls. But in 1990, I gave Brother Steve McLaughlin, a phone call in June because I'd really wanted to get involved in a boarding school. Hadn't done that in my career. And that was midday on a Wednesday, and by 3 o'clock he offered me a job. I had no idea of the landscape I was moving into, but he was a bit of I think, a visionary at the time. Nudgee was coming out of a challenging time in their history. We had boarding numbers up around 570. Mm-hmm. It could be described that it was a bit of a jungle, and it was a very, very willing place. You're also coming out of well, Vietnam War era or Vatican II, take your pick which one you're going to jump for. But those generations had been taught to challenge. And subsequent generations, anyone we teach nowadays, they're not going to just cop things sweet. They're going to want to know why and understand the reasons and challenge them if it's not the case. I'm very proud to say that we were in the first wave of families in boarding, and the friends we made here on campus were very, very good friends, and our kids have grown up as adults, your age and more now, and they're just very tight, and that's the privilege we had of living here. So, yeah, early 90s. Time was right, got involved. Yeah.
And so you started in that capacity, but your roles changed over the years here at the school, right?
It's given me longevity. 2003, we'd won swimming, funny that.
Yep.
And my I'll get into trouble. So my 15-year-old daughter had a friend stay over. We'd won that. We'd had celebratory drinks. We'd gone to bed. And then Jason Hamilton, his wife, rang us about 1 o'clock and said, "Did you know that so-and-so and her friend are up in the top playground?" I said, "No, I didn't." So that was March. We were gone by Easter because I knew then that for a 15-year-old girl, that wasn't the place for her to be. My shelf life was expiring in boarding, and I'm a firm believer in shelf life for different jobs. So then I applied for the Dean of Magee job and got it. So that was the next sort of iteration. And over the time then, that sort of changed in 2009. I went teaching full-time, and then my circumstances changed in 2016, and then this job came up. So that's how the years roll up, by having different jobs in this place. If you've got a fire in your belly,
this place is sensational.
It allows you to do it.
I'm going to say it 10 more times in this podcast, but I could spend the rest of the afternoon walking around this museum. It's sensational. Well, one thing before we move on, you did mention the 2003 swimming team, and I noticed on the wall over there you've actually got.
I was hoping you'd get to that.
Yes, you got it. You got it. There was who was Robbie Martin organised a dinner. This was about 10 years ago with Nudgee won the GPS swimming, I think 11 years in a row, and Robbie Martin, who was a teacher at the school at the time, organised a dinner where all of the swimming captains, and I was fortunate enough to be one of them, got together for a night. To celebrate and come together and talk. And there's a photo on your wall where we've all signed, and Vince Rowley's in there, was our head coach and was like a second father to me at the school.
That's a great memory.
It's a wonderful.
Even for you to say that is lovely. Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, like for myself, like I was a kid who came here in grade 8, was swimming morning and night. I spent more time with Vince than I did with my own family half the time. I started boarding in grade 10 because I wanted to be closer to the pool. Yeah. And I remember coming out of the pool in the morning, I'd go for breakfast, I'd have my eggs and toast, and I used to walk out of the cafeteria with a 2-litre jug of milk, and I would drink that before the first period. Like, we were constantly eating and growing and hungry and training. And all those guys in that photo, from from Shane Kennedy to Douglas Campbell, like all these people I literally grew up with.
And they're good blokes.
Great blokes, Yeah. And again, I just think for anyone who has a touch point with the school in some sense, it's worth coming in here and seeing names, faces, and you'll have a great time exploring. One thing I did want to ask though is, so thank you for putting that up, by the way, is this is the 100th year, I've been told, of the Nudgee Grandstand. And that's fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit about the origin story there?
It's a great story. We always had a stand, but it was not a permanent one. And 1920s, things were getting serious, so they put the stand up because the boarding numbers had grown. The original one sat 500 people, and it was made of ironbark and stood the test of time. And it became a public face of the school. And I've written an article for Behind the Stripes, and I hope it gets through, but I've got this thesis that the boarding community is so tight that the public don't really see what actually goes on to make this place tick. So communal places for the boarders are the dining room, chapel, and that paddock over there.
That's a great.
The way the grandstand works, in my view, is that if a teacher tries to get in and run that, more fool that person. And the boys sort them out pretty quickly. The astute teachers and brothers have always just stood just to the side and there if needs be, but that is run by the boys. I know in my time I've never sat in the grandstand on a home rugby day. A, because I hadn't earned the right, and B, I'm not stupid. And that wasn't my space. And like when the... So,
can I jump in on there?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, because the grandstand is so iconic and it's such an important touch point when you're at the school. And I remember I started here in 1996 and I was blown away. There was this young guy, I'm going to name drop again. He's not a young guy anymore, David Rakowski.
Oh, yes.
It was 96. And he looks like Alfie Langer if you ever know the guy.
His Facebook's fantastic.
His Facebook's great. But he was this short little guy in grade 12 and I was in grade 8 and I couldn't believe that the power that he had over the entire school to whip everyone up into a frenzy in that grandstand on a Friday lunchtime. And I remember in grade 8 being a little, pimply 12-year-old thinking, what is this place? It's unbelievable. And that sense of camaraderie that comes from standing in that grandstand, it just brings people together.
Mums in the local area would set their clocks at 1 o'clock on a Friday
for war cry practice and
cheer
cry practice.
Absolutely, yeah. No,
yeah. So you're right. It's amazing how it is something like pity the fool that's a teacher who tries to run the grandstand.
And what the parents would see and the public, they would see that interaction between the brothers and the staff and the kids, and were amazed at, oh my goodness, what's the dynamic here? What is it that's so special about this place that happens, that all this goes on and it's being managed by the boys and they're just to the side? And as I said, the public face, what you see in the chapel, and some of the chapel liturgies are extraordinary. The dynamism of that celebration. And in the dining room, well, that's a whole other conversation as well. So I think people came to look at, oh my goodness, that's how this place ticks. And the public face is something that's very internal. So that's the grandstand. 1988, let's jump forward. Numbers have blown out, big time.
1988?
1988.
Yep.
So numbers are, not big numbers. So you had to find more space in the stand. We had our first extension. It was created from donations of pine, important to look at the species of timber, and then again in 2002. So the numbers had gone to, that stage around 1,200. And that's how many souls fit in that stand.
Do you know, I feel like in the year 2000, we raised money for an extension of the grandstand.
Correct.
So perhaps it didn't happen until 2002? Is that right?
That's when it was opened, yeah. So they took a while to do it. They did it over the summer, in between seasons, very quickly.
And it was a little controversial because people were like, why would you touch the grandstand? And I remember we raised money because we wanted to fit everyone in there because the school was growing.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wonder if that's still a controversial thing 26 years later.
Well, it's interesting. I hadn't sort of thought of it from that point of view. The kids, the apocryphal story is the kids broke the stand in 2018 in the Nudgee Southport game. When I talked about the staff being on the periphery and stepping in when needs be, an old name, Stephen Mara was a key player in this. He saw what was going on very quickly. Calm was established and everyone was safe, and Steve was part of the leadership that made sure that happened.
I don't know this story. Is this one for the podcast?
Oh, it's a legitimate story.
What happened?
So they were cheering away, and because what had happened was, over the course of time, termites and natural, infestation had impacted it. Now, we had been monitoring the state of it, and that was all, it was fine. All of a sudden, though, we have a tipping point.
It started to give?
Yeah, it was a part of its substructure broke.
Oh.
So it was quickly resolved and then quickly shut down. So that it was rebuilt in 1819 and reopened. So the rebuild is really good because they had a South African mob of chippies come in who loved their rugby. I happen to know them through when I used to take a lot of photographs around Brisbane Rugby, Premier League,
yep.
Premier Union. And these guys saw me from East and they said, "You're the guy on the camera." And they were proud of their work in what they did, and they knew the importance of it for the school. So all ironbark, no more pine. They jacked the whole thing up, put girders in underneath on 4-metre piles, dropped the other stand back down. It's heritage listed. So that meant that we can't put toilets and showers in it. It had to go back to the original footprint and configuration of 1927. It was opened in 27, but built at the end through 26. So it was good. I mean, it's done a great thing, and underneath we now have a gallery where we celebrate our successes on that paddock there, which it's unauspicious, just a humble space to celebrate our story. Images of the grandstand and images of all the flags won on the field.
I love it. One other thing I wanted to talk about was the flats.
Yes.
We talk a lot about the flats. They're in discussion right now because there's plans for some redevelopment down there. What do you think's so special about that plot of land down there?
There are 5 patriarchs Nudgee from the get-go. Two of them were brothers Smith, Big Smith and Little Smith. They were lay brothers. What that means in English is that they came out from Ireland, the potato famine, came here, lived on the Darling Downs. They joined the Christian Brothers not as teachers, but to do other work. So they worked here as accountants, bookkeeping, manual tasks, running the farm, yada, yada, yada. Very pious, holy men. They carved the flats out by hand with pick and axe.
No. Really?
Yeah, extraordinary men.
Wow.
Very, very generous and of spirit. So they were here 25, 30 years, and they all passed in the late 20s. So the flats became a space where the boys could obviously engage. They had turf wickets down there and footy fields. But as you well know, the water table was a foot under and full of saline. Nothing would grow down there. So something had to be done. 1951, they had a development and put a few more footy fields in. But the rural setting of Nudgee is what would such a home for our country kids, and it was just magnificent. People can't believe it when I say, you see where the cattle yards are down the end? Well, the property goes another 1.5 kilometres to the east. It's just huge. So, but the flats are very special.
Yeah, I remember the floods down there. When it rained, all the boarders would go down there, and we'd slide on bodyboards or on our stomachs. It was amazing. It's a phenomenal place, and I know they're looking to redevelop it, which is extremely exciting.
They certainly have done a great job fixing in the first wave of renovation. The fields are. We had an international cricket match played down there, courtesy of that's the quality of the ground down the bottom now. But the facilities that they're putting in look long needed, and it's a massive hub. That space, because that's where parent A meets parent B. They're sitting there watching their kid, and I'm going to chat with them, and they just get to know people, and it becomes a journey in time.
Yep.
Eventually, they get to watch their kids up the top here.
If they're lucky. But most kids don't play up the top here. Most kids play on the flats.
It's very, very, very true.
So a lot of friendships are galvanised for the kids and also for the parents, down on the flats, week after week, season after season. Question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to a prospective family that's considering Nudgee for their son's future, what would that piece of advice be?
This place has something for everybody. Whether you're incredibly academically gifted, incredibly sporting talented, musically endowed, it has something for everybody. And if they don't know what it is they want, this place will allow you to find it. Can I tell you a story?
Absolutely.
Had a valuer in literally yesterday, to value this collection, to start the process of valuing this collection. And quite an eye-opening experience. We were walking downstairs just for a bathroom break, and a boy was walking up the stairs. Now, part of my role is to convert our old VHS tapes and mini DVDs to MP4. So we're digitising. Costs way too much to do it commercially, so I do it in real time while I'm doing my other work. A boy was walking up the steps, and Tom Duff is his name, and he had purpose-built the equipment I'm using from spare parts that he just created himself. And when we got down the steps, I said to the fellow, that fellow there, the skill set he has and what he did is extraordinary. And once again, this place allows people to find their talents.
I love that.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. It is honestly a school for everybody. I think of it like a game of rugby. There's a position for every body type. And when you think of this school, there's a place for everybody, whether you're academic, sporting, whether you're on a spiritual journey or you're just trying to work out, what you do later on in life. You don't have to work out the answer here, but it's going to set you up, hopefully, for when you leave.
It'll give you the ability to make a decision and make choices. I totally agree. Yeah.
Now,
you go. I'm just going to say, old boys are very tight, and I've noticed that since my son's gone through, tight as all get up. And hatch, match and dispatch, big times in their lives, particularly at sad times. And then you see the camaraderie, the loyalty, the mateship.
And totally off a random story, my mum just got a knee replacement 6 weeks ago, and guess who did it? One of my best mates, Phil Rao from school, is the surgeon that did replaced my mother's knee.
Phil Rao,
yeah,
played for West, didn't he?
No, he didn't play for West. Oh, he did play for West.
I think
You're
he
right.
played for West. Yes, I know. I came across it. He's great,
and maybe university at some stage, but. An amazing talent. That's one of the best, surgeons in Queensland. But again, not a moment of tragedy, but like in times of need, when we needed a great surgery.
Yeah.
The guy who my mum used to make pancakes for on the weekend when he'd stay at our house is then, 26 years later replacing, a body part. So I couldn't agree more.
Replacing a body part, yeah.
Great memories, and I've spoken a lot about this museum, and it is really blowing me away. Can you tell everyone who's listening how can they come in and walk through this museum and experience it? Because it's not open 24/7, but there are opportunities throughout the year to come in here, right?
There are. I'm here 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I quite often have groups of people from Viridian, the independent aged care or aged living just on campus here, and I'll get them come up late morning. We have smoko, a couple of sangers and a chinwag, and have a walk around. I open it on home rugby days, orientation, open days. But if anyone wants to come in, it's just a case of a phone call and I can arrange a time. So I have school groups come through at different stages of the term. Tend to be popular at the end of term for babysitting 101 as teachers run out of inspiration for end of term. But I've got some questionnaires and boys are able to come in and have a sticky beak. Boys new to the school come in. I have what I call my Carpe Diem Dead Poets gatherings with the boys and the elite team, because I think it's important that, and so do their coaches, that as they embark upon being at the tip of the spear for Nudgee in those sports, I'm talking football, rugby and cricket, who use that paddock out there particularly. It's important, I believe, for them to understand that they're part of a much bigger picture, and it's just their moment in time to add to that story. And they're very humble. Each group is and they're beautifully led, but they're very humble. And look, basically kids these days don't get to that level unless they get it. Yeah, but that's how I use the space, and it's good. It's very humbling.
Well, John, you get it, and what you're doing in here is sensational. Thank you for all your service to Nudgee over the many, many decades, and thank you for what you're building in here, because as an old boy myself, it really does, it makes you feel warm and proud of where you come from. So
thanks, Wes. Yeah, no, it's a lovely space, and lots of stories in this room.
More stories to come. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Okay.
What a great episode to start the series. I was so privileged to interview John in this museum and this space that he has curated over many, many years. His knowledge and understanding of Nudgee old boys in the community is truly incredible. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, you definitely don't want to miss our next episode, which is with Dr. Stephen Daley, 1994 college captain and Ducks, and he's one of Nudgee's 8 Rhodes Scholars. Did I mention that he also played first 11 cricket and first 15 rugby as well? Incredible. Not just to make you feel good, but you really are one of the most successful Nudgee old boys of all time. How does it feel to have your blazer here on display?
Blazer, it is an honour to have that there too. And there's a story behind that. It goes back to John Sayre, who looks after this museum.
Check out that interview with Dr. Stephen on our next episode of Unscripted.